Hi there, I'm Dan from Peerless Props, and today we're going to be turning all of this into this. Let's get started then. The first thing that we needed was a blueprint. This was just made using Illustrator and the model viewer in Valorant. The model viewer in Valorant is actually really good for this sort of thing because you can get an almost 360-degree view of any of the guns, knives or skins. I'll post a picture of this blueprint on Imgur, and if anybody wanted the Illustrator file, just send me a message on Instagram and I can send it to you. The main body of both the blade and the handle was just made using MDF. The little grooves were first marked in with a Dremel and then smoothed out using a hand file just to make sure that they were all even and uniform. After the details had been marked in and we'd beveled the top, it was time to create the edge for the knife. Now the easiest way to do this would probably have just been to make it from one solid piece of wood and create the edge on a belt sander. But when your studio is also your apartment, you don't really have room for a belt sander. So what I decided to do was to cut a groove in the piece using the Dremel and then insert a 1mm piece of styrene to create a center and then build the edges around that. The edges of the blade were built up using Milliput epoxy putty. This is a 2-part epoxy clay, which when mixed together is quite malleable and soft just like clay, but within around 2 to 3 hours it dries hard and is really easy to sand and it gives a nice finish. So I figured this would be the best way to create a nice smooth, even edge on the blade. With that, the blade was complete and it was time to move on to the handle. The base for the handle was made of 3 separate pieces of MDF glued together to create a little groove in the middle for the blade to sit into. Once the base of the handle was complete, I once again built up the shape using Milliput epoxy putty. This was then sanded down to give the hard angled edges of the final piece. The raised gold piece on the handle was once again a piece of styrene, this time 2mm, formed around the handle with a heat gun. As you'll see once it's all on, we had to fill in some of the gaps again with some more epoxy putty, as it didn't form perfectly around the original shape, as there's some hard edges and weird corners and stuff like that. The details were then all carved directly into the milliput using the Dremel. This was then the construction of the knife pretty much done. The only thing that was missing was the black pieces on the grip, but I wanted to add them after painting over the top of the finished piece. And with it all finished, it was time for paint. All of the paints I used are showed on screen if you wanted to pause it and see exactly what was used. Most of the paints were airbrushed on, except for the primer, which came straight out of a spray can, and then some of the smaller details were just hand painted on using acrylics. The only part of the painting process I didn't film was the hydro dipping of the carbon fibre finish on the blade. This is because this is the first time I've ever hydro dipped anything, and whilst I was worrying about getting it all right and making sure nothing went wrong, I completely forgot to film the process, unfortunately. But if you were wondering about hydro dipping, there's plenty of YouTube tutorials that you can look at to find out how it's done. Probably a lot better than my advice would be as well. After it was all painted, all that was left to do was peel off the masking tape, glue it all together, and reveal the final piece. So there it is, all finished. Overall, I'm really happy with how this one came out. This is the first time I've ever done hydro dipping, so that was all a new experience on the blade. I also changed a few things in my painting process to really get a nice finish on the handle here with the gradient in the middle. If you were looking to have anything like this done, I am currently open for commissions, so just drop me a message on either my Etsy store or my Instagram and I'll get back to you. Or if you just want to see more, have a look at some of my other videos. Or if you really hated it, there's always the third option. You can leave a really mean comment and never see anything I do again.